the year, and St. Mary's is 17th, Ken Palm. And they come off the win against Gonzaga on a crazy day, never seen before in the history of college basketball. Not much had there never been more than 7 teams losing in one day in the top 10. Heck, I don't think there'd ever been 5 teams in the top 10 losing on the same day, and much less even 4. And we're joined again to talk St. Mary's with Steve Kroner, San Francisco Chronicle, and what a night it was. Steve, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. With Craig Paul, and I'm David Smoke. What kind of night was it in that game with St. Mary's and Gonzaga?
It was a pretty special night if you're a St. Mary's fan, that's for sure. That they call it now the University Credit Union Pavilion, but for years it was known as McKeon Pavilion. And it's pretty small. And when it's packed, as it was Saturday night, it can get very, very loud. And it was very, very loud all night, particularly late in the first half. St. Mary's went on a 12-0 run, and there were some ear splitting at the end of that run. And then at the end of the night, it was pretty darn loud as well.
Steve, how big was this for the rest of the conference, maybe psychologically, that to see that, yes, it can be done? You can beat Gonzaga in a conference game.
That's a really good question. I don't know that other teams have what St. Mary's has, which is kind of the front line that can match at least decently Gonzaga's, and the ability to play slower and limit Gonzaga's number of possessions. But sure, it can't hurt the other 8 teams in the conference in terms of their confidence. I had seen Gonzaga play at USF 2 nights earlier, and USF played a pretty good game. USF did not play poorly at all, and USF is 28 in the net. It's got a very good chance to be in the NCAA tournament. It played well, and it still lost by 16 to Gonzaga. It was just one of those nights in which St. Mary's played, particularly in the first half, about as well as it could play, and Gonzaga, particularly in the first half, did not play anywhere near as well as it could play.
How much of that was? I mean, Drew Timme had a bad night shooting. How much of that was just an off night, and how much do you contribute to, or how much did St. Mary's itself contribute to that?
I think it was. I mean, obviously, it's one of those things where I'm sure it's both, but I really think it was St. Mary's defense. They talked about they wanted to limit his touches. They didn't necessarily limit his touches, but as soon as he touched the ball, particularly if he was anywhere near the paint, there were 2 or 3 other guys who were coming in there trying to steal the ball, trying to harass him, and he just didn't handle it very well. And by the end of the first half, when he was 0 for 8 from the first half, which is almost hard to imagine, guys came into the game leading the conference in scoring and was shooting about 59.5% from the floor. By the end of the first half, he looked like a guy who just was not expecting that kind of night, and he had that kind of night.
You know, it's not like St. Mary's hasn't had success before, and Randy Bennett, their head coach, has been their most successful coach. There's a lot of tournament appearances in the last decade or two. So this is not like oh my God, what happened here? How good have they been really in many ways compared to others besides Gonzaga in that conference?
Well, certainly since I've been covering the conference on a consistent basis, which was started the 08-09 season, there's no question that St. Mary's has been the second best team in the conference. And that is really, if you have a historical perspective, in a lot of ways, that's stunning. Because for years, the teams in the West Coast Conference that were really good were USF. You can go back to the 50s with the Bill Russell, Casey Jones teams that won back-to-back national titles. But USF was also very good in the 60s and 70s. Santa Clara has had good teams. Pepperdine has had a run. But for the past 13, 14 years, St. Mary's has been the second best team. It was not a huge upset for St. Mary's to win Saturday night, but it was an upset, no question about it. But what Randy Bennett has done in Moraga, I mean, you can not only make the case that they've been the second best team in the WCC for more than a decade. They've been one of the top 5 teams in the West Coast, Pac-12, Mountain West, any conference you want. St. Mary's certainly in the top 10 of those 3 conferences over the past 13, 15 years. And you can make a pretty strong case. It might be top 5.
Let's talk about this WCC bracket. I know that's gotten a lot of attention with the way that it's set up. Very beneficial, obviously, for the top 2 seeds in Gonzaga and also St. Mary's. And I've seen all sorts of different opinions. And I guess maybe the most overwhelming opinion I've seen was kind of brilliant because it protects your top seeds. But your thoughts on just the layout, the format of the WCC bracket?
I actually like it. And early in my tenure of covering the WCC did it. It was an 18 conference at the time, and it has grown to 10, adding BYU, which is going to be leaving, I believe, after next season, and Pacific. But I think, that obviously, from the conference's perspective, it protects Gonzaga, St. Mary's, but this season, neither team really needs to be protected. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that I like about it, to me, it makes the regular season more important. If there's no benefit really for winning the conference or finishing second, all you do is play a lower seed, but you don't necessarily play fewer games or anything else. I don't know that the regular season becomes all that important. If you're playing, even take it one more step, forget first and second, but there's a big difference between being fourth and fifth. There are 3 other teams kind of behind Gonzaga and St. Mary's, which are USF, Santa Clara, and BYU. Those teams, USF's in good shape to make the NCAA tournament. I don't think BYU, and I know Santa Clara probably won't make it unless they do really well in the WCC tournament. But even that difference, the fact that Santa Clara is 3rd, USF is 4th, and now BYU is 5th, there's a big difference between being 4th and 5th. BYU has to play an extra game in the tournament. So I like it.
You know, you hear that, and Gonzaga has been really good. They've been to multiple Final Fours. We know they played Baylor and got beat up. And Baylor was a once-in-a-lifetime type of team with their experience and how good they were with the guard play, and they had been chomping at the bit as well. But there is sometimes talk that Gonzaga is hurt because of the conference. You've heard that. It's not breaking news. Do you think that's true?
I think mildly it's true, but I think most of it is overrated. Look, the bottom of the WCC over the years has not been as good, say, the bottom of the Pac-12, just looking from the West Coast perspective. The WCC hasn't had the depth that the Pac-12 has for just, again, keeping it on the West Coast. But look what Gonzaga has done in the tournament, first of all. So you can't argue with success. Second of all, it plays a really good non-conference schedule. And third, the bottom of the WCC, it would be hard to argue that it's as good as the bottom of the Pac-12 or the SEC or the Big 12. But the top teams in the WCC, I'll guarantee you St. Mary's could play with most of those teams. USF this season could play in a major conference and at least acquit itself well. Same with Santa Clara. So I do understand the argument that Gonzaga does have a few games in which it can coast that maybe some other top teams don't. But, you're still talking, 3 or 4 games a season that it can do that. And look, it still does get tested, and it still does very well in the tournament. So I understand the argument, but I don't buy much of it.
Thanks, man. Steve, it was electric, huh? 3,500 or so is what that arena
you gotta tell us more about that atmosphere. That just seemed like a crazy place to be over the weekend. Yeah,
it was 3,500, and I'm sure the St. Mary's people were not telling any fire marshals about how many actually were in there.
Yeah, no doubt.
Thank you very much, Steve. Appreciate it. Steve Kroner writes for the San Francisco Chronicle. St. Mary's upsets Gonzaga on a Saturday we had never seen in the history of college basketball, and that was before that game. And 7 of the top 10 teams. And that's why when you look at the top 25, we'll come back and kind of digest that again.